We're back to the Neil Haley Show, and it's kind of funny. Really excited about two amazing guests today. Gordie Jones, and after that, we're going to talk resurrection. And I'll talk resurrection if somehow we don't get that celebrity on the line. So I never want to jinx things. But I first want to welcome to the program author, and I always want to thank partnering with Triumph Books, author of 100 Things You Should Know and Do as a Sixers fan, Gordie Jones. Gordie, thanks for calling, and how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Neil.
So the 100 things the Sixer fans should know and do before they die. And when you're asked to pick to write this book, that must have been pretty cool, right? For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting topic. I think perhaps too many fans look at how the Sixers are now and think that it's always been like that. But as you and I both know, it's a franchise that has a rich history with some of the most memorable and great players in the history of the game. Charles Barkley, Julius Erving, Wilt Chamberlain, Allen Iverson, among others. So it's there's a lot there. So it's a real labor of love.
When I was a NBA basketball fan, I mean, growing up when I was playing basketball and really into it, I mean, you just remember the Celtics and Lakers and then the Sixers. That's pretty much,
yeah.
So they were that storied franchise. And when you talk about Dr. J, that I consider him the number one player ever playing for the Sixers. Do you think it's Dr. J in your opinion?
It's probably him, if only because Wilt Chamberlain really had a very short time with the Sixers themselves. Wilt was with, as you know, he's with the Philadelphia Warriors for a long time, and then when they moved to San Francisco, he was there very briefly, and they came back to the Sixers via trade. So there was really only a small chunk of his career, of a really amazing career numerically, that he spent with the Sixers. But he was part of the 66-67 championship team, which is one of the great teams in NBA history. But shortly after that, he was traded away to the Lakers. So it's as with a lot of things, Wilt, it was a real comet in that part of his career, just a real pinnacle. But he had many others.
So we'll jump to Wilt first. I think definitely it's Dr. J. Maybe Allen Iverson would be mad at me saying that. He'd say he thinks he's the best ever with the Sixers, and he pretty much is the one that people remember if it's the last time the Sixers ever win a game. And we could talk about that. But Wilt Chamberlain's 100 points. That's definitely in this book. And were you able to see that? Did you get to see that game?
No, I was. I'm not quite that old. So that was. I would have been 5 years old then. So.
Do you remember it at 5? Do you remember?
No.
Okay. I remember the Steelers in the 70s when I was 5, so I just wanted to know that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that has obviously lived on in a lot of ways. But there's no video of the game, which is really kind of odd to say in this day and age when everything is on video. But there is a snippet of a radio call by the late great Bill Campbell of him scoring his 100th point. And there's a lot of myth and legend around that game, just about what happened to the ball that he actually scored his 100th point with. That's in the book, and just some other things. Some people say he dunked for his 100th point. Some people say he didn't, and some people say the game ended right then. But there's others who assure everyone that the game was played out the last 40-some seconds. So it's kind of one of those things, one of the last thing that has survived by word of mouth largely.
Why is that? I mean, some people say he never did score 100 points. There are myths and legends about that too, right?
Yeah, I've never heard that one, to be quite honest with you. I mean, but it is kind of one of those things that's actually grown as the years have passed. Harvey Pollack, who just had a very serious car accident, sadly. It was the guy who wrote, very few writers actually went to the game, so he actually wrote the dispatches for the AP, UPI, and the Inquirer, and folks like that. So he's sort of the source on this for a lot of the myth and legend around, or clearing up the myth and legend, I should say, around what happened that night in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, definitely thinking about in Hershey too. Why was the game played in Hershey? That's another question.
Well, it's just one of those things. In that day and age, the Sixers tended to play a lot of games in other sites. So that happened also in their infamous 1972-73 season, they played some games in Hershey too. It just, yeah, the NBA being what it was then, it wasn't like as popular then as now. So the teams tended to move around to different sites just to try to draw in more fans and drum up interest.
Dr. J now. I met him in an elevator, so that's another cool thing. I was in New York City, and I said, there's Dr. J. I mean, I think that when you think of Bird, Magic, then you see it Dr. J, meaning he really was an ambassador for the NBA in so many ways.
Yeah, well, one of the besides being a great player, he was a great ambassador, really understood just his obligations as a professional extended away from the court, that, you know, you are supposed to engage reporters, you are supposed to, you know, make yourself available and drum up interest in the game. And it's really a unique thing to think about, you know, because now in this day and age of all pro sports, you have so many layers of publicists and agents and who knows what that kind of provide a buffer between yourself and the media, and as a result, yourself and the public. But Julius always considered himself, but I can still picture it in the locker room how it was. It would be basically 6 deep around his, well, they didn't really have lockers in that spectrum, but 6 deep around his place in the spectrum locker room, you know, and he would be sitting there icing his knees and taking on every question that came his way. He was really quite unique that way. And set a tone for later players, actually, for the Magics and the Birds and the Michael Jordans.
When I think of when you said about the Dr. J, how did he come up with his name? Is that in the book at all? Dr. J?
No, that actually predated him. He called, there's a couple different threads of how it came about. He played in the Rucker League, the famous Rucker League, in his hometown of, well, actually, it's from Long Island, but in New York City. Mm-hmm. And they would give him different names, and they always had on-court announcers, and they called him the Claw because of his huge hands. And he said, "No, I want to be called the Doctor." But I think it even went back before that. He had a friend in school, and Julius called his friend the Professor because he was bright, and his friend called him the Doctor, and then it got turned into Dr. J eventually. So it goes pretty far back, actually, and seldom has there been a better nickname.
Definitely. So if I rank it, we'd go Dr. J number 1, Wilt Chamberlain number 2, a famous Sixers because you get 100 points. Then it's between Barkley and Iverson. Oh, Iverson's going to get mad at me, especially if I end up ever having him on my show, if he even does media appearances. Everyone at one point makes their rounds, or I end up running into them on my celebrity show. But Charles Barkley, I just tell you, a player that's just exciting. I mean, the size, his whole flair and character, and the ability. I know he played for a lot of teams, but with the Sixers, wow, for sure. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, he played the bulk of his career for the Sixers. So it was as with Iverson, he's definitely one of the more unique players to ever come along. You know, Charles was a shade under 6'5", right, but very much a wide-bodied guy. I mean, when he came into the league, he was flat out fat. He eventually did get himself into really good shape, and he was just strong and explosive, and a very, very unique player in the way he was able to get up the floor and rebound and play inside with players 3-4 inches taller. So a very unique player. Oh. And a very unique personality, as we all know, as he still shows on television with TNT doing the NBA games. So that too, I mean, just very different in every way.
Did you ever get
a guy who has never been a prisoner to his fame? There are a lot of stories about how Michael Jordan would go on the road and he couldn't even leave his hotel room, whereas Charles always, he never minded getting out and mingling with the people, and sometimes that was to his detriment, as we all know, but in large part I think it was a good thing that he was able to do that and wanted to do that.
Did you ever cover Charles and get to have a conversation with him before?
Oh yeah. He was one of those guys. He was also very approachable when he played, and in doing this book he was very gracious with his time.
Yeah, Charles is awesome. I mean, I'm a fan of his. And now, let's go before we go to Allen Iverson. Daryl Dawkins, Chocolate Thunder. Oh my, another character for sure, right?
Yeah, another unique personality for sure. I mean, the guy who broke 2 backboards, and the other story, one of the stories that's in the book, is about how one time he wanted to end practice early, so he broke a backboard in practice also. As far as the ones he did during the games, I mean, the first one he said he did by accident. The second one he just wanted to see if he could do it, and he did. And that, as we know, has led years ago to changes to the collapsible rims in the NBA. So he's actually kind of a trailblazer that way. But in another sense, he was something of a disappointment because he had a lot of ability and he never, ever quite realized that. He was a good NBA player, but he was never the player that a lot of people thought he could have and should have been. So that there's some disappointment there that maybe he was a little bit too free-spirited to ever really knuckle down and become, a truly great player.
Yeah, he was part of a lot of blooper films as well, for sure. Oh my gosh! And then I can't believe we're so close to running out of time. In like 30 seconds, what would you say the character of Allen Iverson? See, look at this. This book is chock full of so many more things. We just mentioned 5 storied players, and our time's almost running out. But how about Allen Iverson in 30 seconds? What would you say?
A very unique player, and hard to sum up in a short block of time, but just incredibly unique, probably the toughest little guy you'll ever see, and a guy who truly always did it his way, and actually kind of a cultural trailblazer, just the way he, his look and his way of going about things really kind of set the tone for a generation in a lot of ways.
Definitely, and a small player, kind of like a Charles Barkley, but in a guard that really was the team. He made the Sixers, and probably Allen would say after I left, the Sixers are no more, in a way, with not winning and things like that and some losing times, but maybe we'll see the Sixers come back. The best place we can find information on Gordie Jones is to go to triumphbooks.com. You can find the book at Barnes & Noble and all the different places, Amazon. Gordie, is there any place to find information on you for our listeners to check you out?
You're putting me on the spot here, Neil. I have a Twitter page. It's at Gordon W. Jones, so you can check me out there.
All right, well, Gordie, in 10 seconds, do you think that the Sixers will be back again? Do you see any good?
Yeah, I actually do think that. I mean, I think it's cyclical, and I think the worst place to be in the NBA is in the middle, where they were for so many years.
They got to throw some money at some big player and see how quickly the Cavs turned around, bringing back LeBron. So good talking to you, and best of luck, okay?
All right, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
All right, when we get back, we're going to have another amazing guest, or will I jinx everything? You're watching The Neil Haley Show, also simulcasted on the Total Education Network, and we'll be back in just a moment with some great talk.
Hi, we are the varsity cheerleaders at Bethel Park High School, and we have a special invitation for you.
We would like you to join us for the Bethel Park Cheerleaders and Boosters 25th Annual Spring Fashion Show that benefits Allegheny County Special Olympics.
This year's Sweetest Adventure theme show will be held on Sunday, March 22nd, 2015.
It will be held at the Independence Middle School's auditorium. Doors open at noon.
Tickets are $5 for adults and $3 for students.
We have had incredible support from the community for this annual event in years past, and all proceeds go directly to this very worthwhile charity.
Last year, the fashion show resulted in a donation of $9,000.
Bethel Park Cheerleading Boosters Association's total donation from the past 2 decades has raised more than $176,000.
Your support on behalf of this very important cause will help to raise money to enrich the lives of Special Olympic athletes throughout Allegheny County.
Through your support, these very special athletes will be given opportunities to train and compete in 19 different sports throughout the year.
Each year, we invite an ambassador to participate in this exciting charitable event. This year, we have 3 special guests.
We are pleased to introduce our 2015 Special Olympic athletes and Jessica Clayton, who is the Special Olympics of Allegheny County Global Messenger. Our special ambassadors are Aiden Marple and Molly Mathias.
There is a wonderful afternoon planned with fashion from many local stores.
Please come to see us model at the fashion show while you help support the Allegheny County Special Olympics, which has done so much to support Special Olympic athletes.
There is also a fabulous basket auction and light refreshments.
Our primary source of fundraising comes from the basket auction, where the baskets are made from items donated by local businesses.
Please join us on Sunday, March 22nd at 1 p.m. at Independence Middle School. For tickets, please see any Bethel Park cheerleader or call Devin Rutherford at 412-851-1276. Please support Special Olympics. Go Hawks!
We're back to the Neil Haley Show, and I was going to not jinx myself about our celebrity author on because this show, my wife and I are just cult fans of it since it's been on. And every Sunday we're like, okay, it's 9 o'clock Eastern. We got to watch Resurrection. And we just, every time we were left hanging. And the season premieres, second season. What's happening next? Every time there's a different turn. Well, maybe my guest right now might be able to give us a little secret. I doubt it, but again, we got to read his book. So I'm excited to welcome to the program New York Times best-selling author Jason Mott, author of a best-selling book, The Returned, that's based on the TV show ABC's Resurrection. Jason, thanks for calling, and how are you?
I'm doing very good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Jason, did you ever think through The Return that this would be such a cult classic, The Resurrection, meaning of so many fans that are left hanging, and when it debuted, did you ever think that it would be turned into a TV show?
No, I had no idea, no inkling at all. It was just a project that I was working on. At the time, I was pretty much an unpublished author as far as fiction goes, so I didn't even think that it would get published, much less, have a television series spun off of it and things like that. So I was completely shocked, but definitely enjoyed the ride so far.
Oh, I'm sure you are, and getting the celebrity status, a lot of authors don't get that, and to look at this the first time, the way they promoted this and left people hanging right at the beginning. I guess when you talk about losing a loved one at an early age, every parent can think of that, and I think that's the beginning thing that really brought this show to the excitement, is to see specifically someone come back to life. Jacob losing his life and being brought back to the parents 20 years later. I mean, that really just begins this cliffhanger, doesn't it? In so many ways. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's one of those things that we, loss in and of itself is something that we can all kind of relate to. And so the idea of Harold and this couple, who's, their son passed at this very young, pivotal point in not only in their son's life, but also in their marriage. They were very young when their son was lost, and to suddenly be back with him again after all these years, it was a very powerful moment, I think, for the characters, both in the novel and within the television series.
And when we see specifically the loss, and then he comes back, and then other people come back, I'm sure that you were live tweeting and were really into this, especially when the first premiere came out, right? And people were like, holy cow, what's happening next? Come on, Jason, give us a hint, right? For sure.
Yeah, very much. I definitely enjoyed, watching the reaction and watching everyone kind of, discover the characters and discover the show, the story itself. It was just a whole lot of fun. ABC and Plan B are doing a terrific job with the project, so it's cool to be a part of that and just kind of see people discover the characters.
See people discover the characters and understand things and be left hanging and not know what's the next cliffhanger. And I think that's what television does the best of. But I'm sure, Jason, every time you're like, this episode ends and you're probably your website is getting tons of hits and people are tweeting you and seeing you on the street saying, what's going to happen next, Jason? Can you give us that thing? And that's probably the funniest part, right? Do you ever make that comment? Did you get the chance to read my book as well? Because it's a great way to get people interested in reading a book. They're television fans, right?
Yeah, exactly. People will oftentimes ask me, what's going on with the show and what's going to happen next season and what about next episode and things like that. But it's a case where, luckily, Aaron Zellman, who's the showrunner, he's the one who's in charge of all those hard questions. So I get to kind of hang back and watch everyone's reaction and, see what he's doing with it, which is, I think he's doing a phenomenal job with it. So it's a lot of fun to kind of be a part of, but also to be able to sit back and just see people's reaction from the outside as well. It's just a lot of fun.
So how did The Return do once the book probably made another big run, right after the series started, right? People were really coming back to that, right? For sure.
Yeah, definitely. Once people, when the novel came out, it was because it got really good reviews, so it was discovered by a lot of like hardcore readers, and people enjoyed it that way. And then once the television series kind of came about, about 6 months later, hitting television, people who had not quite heard of it, which kind of led to the book that way, and they discovered it that way. So it was really cool to kind of watch the two, feed off each other. People that had read the book early were excited to see what the television show did with the story, and then people who discovered the show first were excited to find out there was a novel about it where they could find out more about the characters and just see, where the story came from. So the two are actually working hand in hand in a pretty good fashion.
I agree. And are the characters in the book pretty much the same characters on the TV show, or there were different characters added to it?
Well, the central characters are pretty much the same. The television series definitely has, the storylines are different. Like I would say the first season is maybe 70% kind of from the novel. And then second season, it kind of starts bringing in new characters and kind of expanding the world in and of itself, which I think is just absolutely terrific. So to a certain extent, the heart of it is the same, which to me was the most important part. I wrote this novel, and then so when the television people kind of came knocking and said they wanted to work with it, I don't mind them changing the characters or changing the story, but I wanted them to really stick to the heart of the project, which is what they did. So it's two different experiences, but also very similar experiences as well.
So the storylines in season 2 are less about the book than in season 1, it sounds like, to you.
Yes, I think that's definitely a fair assessment. Like they're still, when you look at the path that they're going, they're still kind of going the same path, but just taking a slightly different route. So I've actually had a lot of fun seeing that because, I'll see certain things where there'll be an episode or two where the storyline goes a different way, and it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And then when I look at it on a larger scale, it's like, oh, they're actually leading into this other part that's actually in the book as well. That's a pretty cool way to lead into that. So it's pretty interesting.
So for Jason, for our listeners that have not watched Resurrection, and viewers, which you're crazy not to, and go to your DVR right now or watch it on demand, watch the entire season, or wait till it comes on DVD, or go whatever places. Tell us the quick storyline to the premise of the story, for sure.
Sure. The premise is basically centered around this global event in which loved ones who have passed away have suddenly begun returning just as they were in life. It centers on this couple who are in their 70s, and their 8-year-old son, who drowned several years ago, comes back to them still exactly 8 years old, just as he was. And it's not just happening for this one couple. It's actually happening for people all across the globe. So the story just focuses on, how people react to these individuals who are returning, and they're not zombies that just want back into their lives. They're trying to kind of get these moments back into their life. But people's reactions are very polarized. Some people think that they're kind of abominations. My loved one passed away and people don't come back. And others view it as a second chance to kind of, share time with people that they've lost, and, a second chance to get things right. So the story follows that trajectory. It just kind of shows how people react to it and what it means in particular to this couple, Harold and Lucille, in the novel, who have their son back, and how they feel about it.
I know, and taking us through. Now, if you read the entire book, is that going to spoil the TV at all, or no? Because they can continue to do spin-offs throughout, right? If you read
not at all, actually. The book, that's one thing I actually enjoy, the fact that the television show doesn't spoil the book, and the book doesn't spoil the television series. Okay. So you can kind of see both sides of it. You get different viewpoints from the characters in the novel than you get from the television series. But, the flip side of that is you get different viewpoints, which is interesting because you get to see the characters develop in slightly different ways. So their conflicts are often similar, but with just enough difference to make it really intriguing and really new.
So in the book, don't spoil anything because I want to read it. So did it end up leaving you hanging? Did that part leave us hanging just like the TV show once you finish the book?
Well, I think there's
not say anything.
There's definitely,
just say, yeah.
There's definitely some resolution there. There's different degrees of resolution. I'll say that, but there's definitely resolution. Like you find out the story for the characters is resolved. I'll say that.
Okay, and so basically, do you look like there's going to be a sequel for the book? Any chance of continuing the story?
For the novel right now, at this point, it's not something I'm working on. I'm kind of working on some new projects right now for the novel. So as far as the novel goes, as of this moment, I don't have any plans to expand on it. That may change. You never know what the future holds.
It just depends on what happens with TV, I'm sure. And if a publisher calls and says, we need to do a project, we'll go ahead and do that. And what would you say, like, the different storylines? I think what made the show, for my wife and I enjoying it so much, is that, again, bringing loved ones, if they really came back, and how would you react? And so that was pretty much why you came up with this, right? This whole story, right? You're looking at
exactly.
the loss of a loved one, for sure.
Exactly. The story kind of came about, like, my parents both passed when I was in my early 20s. And, when I started this project, it kind of came about because I had this really vivid dream once about in 2010 that I come home from work and found my mother sitting at the kitchen table waiting for me. And I came in and sat with her, and her and I just talked about all the things that had happened in the years since she passed away. And so for weeks after that, I just couldn't get this dream out of my head. It was so vivid, and it felt completely real. And I was talking to a friend about it. He said, wouldn't it be amazing if that actually happened? And what if it wasn't just your mother? What if other people were coming back too? And that's really where the story came from.
And Jason, that's what speaks to it. And then also the cliffhangers, for sure. And starting with a little boy who, to imagine losing one of my kids and then to see them reappear, and then what's going to happen next, starting with one town in Arcadia to the entire world, if people have watched it in the last episode of the season 2. And Jason, you have no news, because we're going to go to your new book. You can tell us a little bit about your new book really quickly. Is there any news that you'll be able to report soon about if the possibility of season 3?
No news to report about season 3 yet. Right now, it's just we're all kind of waiting to see, but hopefully an announcement will be coming soon. As for the new novel, it's a novel called The Wonder of All Things. It centers around this young girl named Ava, who it is discovered has the ability to actually heal people by touching them.
Oh, wow.
She's at an air show. Her friend is injured pretty badly. She tries to kind of stop the bleeding and somehow actually heals him. And the entire thing is caught on someone's cell phone. They're videotaping the entire thing, and it gets uploaded to YouTube. And before you know it, the entire world knows about this strange event, this young girl at the center of it. And people want answers. It kind of begins tearing the family apart. So that's the basic premise of the new novel, The Wonder of All Things. And the cool thing about that novel is it was actually optioned by Lionsgate. So there's talk of them trying to produce it into a film. Fingers crossed. We'll see how that goes. But it's a very, very fun novel for me. I enjoyed it very much, and it's out now in bookstores.
All right, so you could find information on you at your website, Jason. But guess what? Ava's one of my daughter's names, so I'm going to have to read that book as well.
Oh, wonderful, definitely.
Yeah. Where can you find information on you, Jason? And you can find your books at all bookstores, local and national, and Amazon.com. But where can we find info on you? Where can we go?
Yes, information for me can be found at jasonmottauthor.com. If you go there, it gives you all the information about books, the work projects I'm working on, book sales, and, of course, Twitter and Facebook and all the social media good stuff.
And you're interacting on Twitter, or we wouldn't have met each other. I somehow got in touch with your publicist, your book publisher, but ultimately you tweeted me back. So that's the awesome thing about Jason is he sees the fans. He sees that he wants to continue. And I see that your next book, guess what? It's speaking to that same dream of bringing people back to life, healing them. And I hope that becomes a movie, and I'll definitely have you back on again, Jason, so you keep in touch with me and let me know. So thanks again for calling, Jason.
All right. Thank you very well. Thanks for having me.
I enjoyed it, and thanks again. All right, that was the Neil Haley Show, and please, Resurrection Season 3. That's all I have to say. Have a great week. We'll talk next week on the Neil Haley Show. Good day.